I married into this family and gave birth to an heir, so you should be grateful to me. Asking for more is just plain greedy. Despite being a housewife and living in the same household, she did nothing around the house and expected to be treated like a guest. The eldest son's wife didn't change, even after having a child. In the midst of this, my husband Daniel had a serious accident and passed away, but something about the eldest son's wife's behavior felt off. Doing something so disgraceful that you can't even face God, she'll surely realize the consequences soon. I'm Kate, just an ordinary housewife. I've been married to my husband for about 50 years, but we only recently parted ways, and I haven't had much appetite since. Even now, I half expect him to walk in through that door, laughing. I loved my husband so much, and we had just promised to live a long life together. But that promise was broken too soon for reasons I can't accept. Sometimes I even wonder if there was anything I could have done differently. Even now, I sometimes catch myself wondering if there was something more I could have done. Now, I can't help but adore my husband, but originally, I was a workaholic. Back when I was young, I loved working and believed that a woman could make it on her own with a job. But perhaps out of concern or impatience, people around me kept trying to set me up with men. I'd meet these men, introduced by acquaintances, have coffee, and chat. Not wanting to let such vague encounters dictate my life, I turned down all such introductions. One day, my parents must have felt it was bad that I kept refusing introductions. They tempted me with a lipstick in a color no one else in town had, suggesting that meeting the man just once for coffee wouldn't hurt. Little did I know that this lipstick-baited introduction would completely turn my life around 180 degrees. The man I met had a delightful first impression. He had a childlike smile with a grown-up body, talkative and sometimes said unnecessary things, but he was charmingly clumsy. I was drawn to him, and before I knew it, we were married. We had a boy and a girl. My daughter, charming from a young age, had close friends and got married early, leaving the house. On the other hand, my son, even though he's a man like his father, had a completely opposite personality. He's been working at the town hall since graduating high school, unremarkable at first glance, with his only virtue being his seriousness. As his parents, we understand his good qualities, but society doesn't always see it that way. Often, in love and relationships, nice but boring is a common phrase, and it fitted him perfectly. Neither in his workplace nor private life did he have much excitement, and he didn't have many close friends of either gender. Understandably, he was clueless about romance with women and seemed uninterested, even as he grew older. However, marriage announcements from his few high school friends seemed to have sparked some longing. Despite believing himself to be unattractive and dull, hence unfit for marriage, he still hoped to find someone he could love and live with, wanting to put us, his parents, at ease. He often participated in matchmaking events and social mixers organized by the town. At first, I thought about introducing my son to a woman I knew, just like how I met my husband. But I decided to let him find his own way, without interference, as he seemed to be doing just that. When the season changed from winter to spring, I noticed something different about my eldest son. Nathan, that's unusual for you. Is something up? Maybe it's the spring? I just feel happy. He started paying attention to the colors of his clothes and reading catalogs of women's brands. At first, he tried to avoid the topic, but as a mother, I could tell. When I asked him, he admitted he was seeing someone with marriage in mind. His birthday was coming up soon, and he wanted to submit the marriage registration then. His face was filled with joy as he talked about it. She's got so many interests and always seems happy. Her smile is radiant. She has so many qualities I lack, and I just knew I wanted to be with her. It turns out he met her while eating at a restaurant near his workplace. He had a long-standing habit of eating at the same restaurant every Wednesday and Thursday, ordering lunch at his usual spot. She happened to be nearby and struck up a conversation with him, and they hit it off more than he'd expected. I never knew every day things could be so fun. If it was just home and work, I would have never realized. Oh, Nathan, I am so happy for you. Can you introduce her to me? Of course. Can I bring her over this Sunday? We were planning to go to a cafe, but I'll ask her. She's been wanting to meet Mom, so it should be fine. I was curious about the woman who captivated my son, who had always been serious and lacked experience with women, but I couldn't meet her on the promised day. Mom, I'm sorry. The day before yesterday, she told me she might be late because she had a fan meeting to attend, to see her favorite artist. I haven't heard from her since, so I thought it was okay. Nathan, you don't need to apologize for that. You didn't know what would happen at the time, and it's fine. Just introduce her to me another time. Next to my apologetic son, I had a bad feeling. For someone dating my son with marriage in mind, we would be her future in-laws. Generally, you wouldn't break a promise without any communication. I didn't meet her until after they had submitted their marriage certificate, so by then, they were already married. This is Anna, the girlfriend I mentioned before, now my wife. Nice to meet you. Please take care of me. Anna was the woman my son married. Her makeup-free face, wearing a sweater and jeans, she spoke in a small voice. I was shocked because she was quite different from the multi-talented, radiant person my son had described. Even while talking to us, she kept glancing at her notebook, scribbling something. I caught a glimpse of her planner, and it was filled with schedules written in colorful pens. Photo sessions, fan events, meetups. I had never heard of such things, wondering what they were all about. She had been working at a grocery store and living with her parents, but she had planned to quit her job and become a housewife after marriage. It seemed odd to have such a packed schedule for someone planning to be a housewife. Personally, I find it hard to comprehend. While she was talking to us, she kept frequently checking the time and murmuring softly to herself. In 30 minutes, my live stream starts. What should I do? I need to hurry. Anna, is something wrong? Do you have plans after this? No, it's nothing. She seemed frustrated, wanting to wrap up quickly for her own reasons, and she looked visibly irritated. The conversation didn't go well, so we called it a day. My son, who had never been lucky with women, finally got married and looked happy. But on the other hand, the irritated face and incomprehensible behavior and words of my eldest son's wife bothered me. Something was concerning. Soon after hearing they were married, they suggested moving in with us. The couple wanted to save money for the future, and we agreed to help if we could, leading to their request to live with us. While we had no problem with it, I worried about the stress on my son's wife, being a housewife in an unfamiliar home for the first time. However, she assured us there was nothing to worry about, and we quickly decided to live together. Her actions were swift once we agreed to live together. Everything was moved from her previous home within 3 days after the decision. The slight unease I felt when I first met Anna gradually grew stronger, and eventually, I understood why. Even from my perspective, she didn't seem to exhibit the behavior or aura of someone who had just married. She was always carrying her planner, filled with appointments, photos of male idols, and her mobile phone. It's her prerogative to carry whatever she wants, but it's not proper to never put the phone down, even when talking to my husband, me, or my son. One day, we decided to set some rules to ensure a pleasant cohabitation experience, but the first to voice her opinion was Anna. We may live in the same house as Kate and her husband, but let's not interfere in each other's private lives since we're separate families. Privacy. Yes, that's important. We should avoid over-interfering in each other's matters and maintain a healthy distance. But using this rule as an excuse, she hardly did any housework, despite claiming to be a housewife. She was always glued to her mobile phone, leaving me to prepare meals and clean, and my husband to handle the heavy chores. But I have a slender waist and get hurt easily. But making a person over 70 do the heavy lifting and not helping out, isn't that a bit much, Anna? I wish you'd help out sometimes. So you're saying it's okay for me to hurt my back? Is that what you think? That's terrible! Didn't we agree not to meddle in each other's household matters? She yelled loudly, a stark contrast to her usual soft-spoken manner. Her sudden outbursts during conversations were unpredictable. With everything being like this, we couldn't have proper discussions, and time just passed. Eventually, Anna started spending time in a storage shed in our annex. Light from the TV leaked out, and she could be heard shouting someone's name. It was probably the male idol in the photos she always carried. The shed seemed like her personal space. There was no consideration or effort from her to live comfortably with us, only a focus on how to live easily for herself, which was discomforting to us. But my son seemed unable to confront his wife strongly and always appeared indecisive. Anna is struggling in a new environment. I'll help with the housework when I return from work. But she does nothing during the day and locks herself in the annex, screaming. I'm worried. I'll talk to her about it, don't worry. I don't know what happened between them, but Anna got pregnant. She had severe morning sickness and threatened premature labor, spending most of her pregnancy in the hospital. But I remember feeling relieved when she gave birth. Until now, we, along with my husband and son, had helped her with everything, even though she claimed to be a housewife, but did nothing. But now, with a child, she needs to act as a mother. There are plenty of adults in this house to help with chores, but no one can replace a mother. I hope she would realize her time of doing nothing as a guest had ended since she married into our son's family. However, my hopes were in vain, as her lifestyle remained unchanged after giving birth. It seemed even worse than before. She often left the baby with us, or my son, and went out. When she stayed out all night and returned in the morning when the child was about a year old, I finally had to speak up. Going out without telling anyone and coming back in the morning while you have a child? What are you thinking? Be responsible. What? Telling me what to do? I married into this family and gave birth to an heir. I understand being grateful, but meddling like this is just being too greedy. While she casually said such things, there were aspects where she completely relied on us. It's too rural here to travel for events. I want to save the taxi fare for merchandise, so drive me there. It was quite a selfish request, but arguing wouldn't help, so we did as she asked. Dealing with the whims of my free-spirited daughter-in-law, it was hard to understand what my son saw in her to decide on marriage. When I was feeling stressed and distrustful towards her, an incident occurred. One day, I had a neighborhood association meeting, so I asked my husband to watch the house. Anna seemed to be in the annex as usual, so I called out to her and left for the meeting. When I returned home, I found my husband collapsed at the bottom of the stairs. He couldn't move and seemed to be in pain. As I panicked, my son's wife emerged from the next room. Daniel? Hang in there! Oh, how could this happen while I'm home? I've called an ambulance. Please, hold on. She seemed shocked, but was ahead of me in taking action. Daniel, the ambulance is here. I'll accompany you. So, Kate, please wait at home. It was a fine play from the daughter-in-law who usually stayed in the annex or was harsh towards us. I thought my husband's injury would heal and he'd be discharged safely, but contrary to my expectations, his hospital stay extended. Unfamiliar with hospital life, he visibly weakened both mentally and physically. When I visited, I saw my husband, weaker than I'd ever seen him before. My son's wife and grandson were already there, visiting. I'm worried about Daniel. Seeing him weaken day by day, I just can't stay calm. While I was concerned about my husband's fearful gaze, her actions during this sequence of events felt off. The daughter-in-law, who usually hardly ever leaves the house in the annex, came out from the next room at that time. It was as if she knew about my husband's condition. Furthermore, she seemed too adept at handling emergency calls and hospital procedures, unlike her usual behavior. And while my husband seemed to want to go home, he also showed signs of not wanting to leave. Eventually, he couldn't even eat properly, and passed away suddenly. With my husband's injury and the sudden separation, there were many concerns, but there was no time to dwell on them. The shock was greater than I anticipated, and I struggled to cope. Kate, don't be down. Let me and my husband handle the funeral. Yes, I'm not feeling well, so I'll leave it to you. Since my husband's injury, my son's wife has become surprisingly reliable. It's hard to believe she's the same person who used to keep her distance from the family. She quickly made arrangements and plans with the church staff. I've been indebted to Daniel for so long since he worked, and I stayed home. Please let me repay him this one last time, she said, teary-eyed. But then my grandson, uneasy, ran off somewhere. He ran so fast as if fleeing from something that I lost sight of him. On the day of the funeral, my son's family, including their child, attended. Since my grandson was born, he lived with us, making him very dear to my husband. He loved my husband dearly. At 5 years old, he probably understood the concept of a funeral and that he wouldn't see his beloved grandpa again. His behavior was unusual, restless, unlike his usual calm self. But my son's wife, not wanting to attract attention in a crowd, gently hugged him from behind. Come on, Frank. Say your final goodbye to Grandpa. It's not the last! Don't touch me! Don't come near! It's scary! My usually calm grandson, who rarely causes a fuss, acted out like never before. The surrounding people also felt that his behavior was unusual, causing a commotion. Amidst the noise, he shouted loudly, "Grandpa said Mom pushed him down!" The 5-year-old pointed at the portrait and stated it clearly. Everyone was taken aback by his sudden claim, and various speculations began to circulate. Watching this, my son's wife briefly looked down while holding her child, but then looked up and firmly said, "This child, influenced by recent anime, says things like this. It's my fault for not educating him properly. I apologize. I'll talk to him about it later." After she said this, the commotion seemed to subside. Then my grandson ran out of the funeral hall alone. Some people, concerned, chased after him, but it seems they lost him and quickly returned. Despite the child's whims, the funeral didn't wait. The scheduled speeches and prayers proceeded, and only the stone striking to close the coffin remained. Before that, it was time to place farewell flowers. As attendees placed flowers in the coffin and said their goodbyes, my grandson ran back in with scissors. He stopped the people about to nail the coffin shut, trying to take the waist pouch my husband always wore. "Dad, get Grandpa's couch he always wore on his waist!" he screamed while putting the scissors to the belt of the pouch. But my son's wife gently intervened. "Dear, that pouch is something Grandpa always cherished, and he wants to take it to heaven." "Don't come near! Mom's lying! She didn't say that! Dad, help me quickly!" My son, sensing something was amiss from his usually quiet child's insistence, rushed to the coffin with him to remove the pouch. While my son's wife stood there, doing nothing, as soon as it was removed, she reached for the pouch my son held. "No, don't touch that pouch!" She tried to snatch the pouch, but her actions seemed too unnatural. Given her past behavior, my son must have had his suspicions. He brushed off her hand and handed the pouch to the child. "Frank, what's in this pouch? You're insisting so much." "Grandpa told me to help and save him." As my grandson emptied the pouch on the spot, my son's wife yelled at him. "Stop it! Grandpa would be sad. Do you want to ruin the funeral? Grandpa told me to do this. Leave me alone! He shouted, ignoring her, and focused on emptying all the pockets. He reached, lastly, for a hidden pocket at the very back. I was unaware of such a pocket, but inside it was a slightly larger than usual pen. With this pen in hand, my grandson ran to the person operating a computer beside the room where the funeral was being held. Open the cap and connect it to that machine. Naturally, I didn't know my husband had such a pen, and there was no way my grandson could have known about it. Moreover, my son's family rarely used a computer at home, so my grandson wouldn't know how to use one. But his determined words and actions almost made me believe in some inexplicable power. What we thought was a pen turned out to be a voice recorder, and it clearly captured the sounds of my husband and daughter-in-law in a scuffle. Just die already, old man! Leave your money and go away! Once you're gone, he'll be the patriarch! You're just in the way! It was clearly my daughter-in-law's voice, hurling unthinkable abuse. The recording also captured the sound of what seemed to be a fall. Anna, how could you do such a thing? What was it all for? It wasn't me. I'm telling you, I don't know. You saw me, Kate, when Daniel was injured, when he was in the hospital, and how I acted at the funeral. And yet you still say it's me? Frank is upset seeing his mom being blamed. She persistently acted innocent, portraying herself as a devoted daughter-in-law who had been caring for her father-in-law. Her theatrical manner of speaking was irritating. As I was contemplating how to confront her, suddenly my grandson spoke up. I know! When I was at daycare, she put oil on the stairs and said she was going to kill Grandpa. Stop making up stories for fun! If you don't behave, the boogeyman will come! Initially, my son's wife pretended ignorance, using her son as an excuse, but his words caused her to change her stance drastically. Grandpa told me to run away because I'd be next. Mom, don't come near me! Saying this, he grabbed some paper and a pen and started writing something. Their 5-year-old child rarely wrote anything with a pen, but he proceeded to write slowly. Looking at the paper, both my son and his wife were shocked. In my husband's handwriting, it said, "If anything happens to Frank, I'll curse you. Be prepared." Stop! Please stop! I had to do it! Rejected by her own child and cornered, my son's wife finally confessed everything. Why did you do this? What was so important that you needed to harm someone? I wanted to be more helpful to Paul. Paul was everything to me. I was initially surprised by the mention of a man's name, but then realized it was a name I often heard on TV. He was one of the popular male idols. As the conversation continued, it turned out that it all started with her desire to spend more money on her favorite idol. If it's for Paul, I could do anything. There's a limit to how much money I can earn myself. So I realized if I marry someone with money, that's the solution. So you approached me and wanted to marry, not because you liked me, but for that Paul guy? Of course. Who would marry a dull guy like you for love? Originally, she married my son for his money, seeing him as a stable, uninteresting man, likely to have surplus funds. She needed more money than my son could provide, thinking that life insurance would be a quick solution. I wanted to be noticed and recognized by Paul. His income wasn't enough. I needed more money to get closer to Paul. So you wanted not just my earnings, but also the insurance money? That's why? Meeting him cost money. Photos, handshakes. It's all about money. There are so many fans. I can't lose. Understand? My son's income was necessary for living expenses, but she figured my husband's insurance payout would be larger. She thought if something happened to my husband, The money would mainly stay in the house, and she'd have free access to it. Eventually, she believed she'd have control over the family's finances, allowing her to spend freely on her idol. My son, regaining his sanity from this ordeal, quickly moved towards divorce. I liked you because you seemed to shine when doing what you loved, but I didn't see the rest. I can't believe you'd harm someone for that. I can't live with you, for our son's sake. Wait, you loved me, right? You married me because you loved me. How can you divorce me so easily? Despite everything, she still believed my son loved her, showing her thick-skinned nature. I believe what Frank and Dad are saying. The thought of our son becoming a nuisance to you is terrifying. That's just a delusion. I've been leaving everything to you. But from now on, I'll take charge of disciplining Frank. I'll definitely get custody. She even claimed she would get custody, oblivious to the absurdity of her claims. If you divorce me, where will I live? The one who initiates the divorce pays alimony, right? Well, with child support from you and the town, I'll be fine. You can go ahead and divorce me, but you might end up unable to live. So you only see the child as money. It's sad to think of him growing up with you. Custody isn't guaranteed to the mother. I can't give up my child to someone who harms others for their selfish reasons. The police were contacted and an investigation at our house was initiated. A distant relative who was a police officer at the funeral arranged it. Upon investigation, they found injuries and marks that wouldn't occur from a normal fall, and the voice recording was taken as evidence. My son's wife was almost certainly the one who pushed my husband. My son and I didn't even need to file a complaint. She was taken by the police that same day. Though normal life wouldn't return for a while, she faced the consequences of her actions. My son quickly had her sign the divorce papers and submitted them, returning to being single. He's now living as a single father, raising our grandson. My beloved husband won't return, but I find happiness in the life surrounded by my son and adorable grandson. The sorrow and precious time lost won't come back, but I look forward to my grandson's growth. After the incident, his mysterious powers seemed to fade, and he talked less about my husband. I want to focus on happiness in the future, not the past.